In this lesson, we're going to go over addition with integers. Understand intuitively how to add integers. Know how to add integers. Learn how to add integers in a vertical format and what you could do. Be able to determine whether or not a particular integer is a solution to an equation. We'll be doing that in a later chapter as well. Okay, so looking at this, we have a negative 15 and a negative 5 that we're going to add together. And we get a negative 20. Here we have a positive 10 and a negative 2. Well, you might think of this as a sort of subtraction. 10 minus 2 is 8. But notice it's in the form of addition. We're adding unlike signed numbers. But it works out the same. A positive 8. Now here both are the same signs, so you just add them up. 4 and 11 are 15. Now here, negative 12 is a little larger, or a lot larger in a sense, than a 5. And it's negative, as we say. So what will this be? Well, one of the ways they'll be mentioning here shortly is you take the absolute value of 12, negative 12, which is 12, and the absolute value of 5, which is 5, and you subtract the smaller from the larger, and you get 7. Then you apply the sign of the larger absolute value, which is negative here. Negative 7. Now, if you put this into your calculator, negative 12 plus 5, it'll show you negative 7. But intuitively, you want to be sure you get the right signs and have an idea of what's going on. Now, here, these are opposites. Remember, if one's negative and the other's positive, and they're the same, in a sense, numbers, adding an opposite to a number gives you a 0. And here they're just reviewing the rules that we just went over. All right, one of the rules I want you to write in your notes is what is called the additive inverse. Now, what would be a synonym or something that means the same as an additive inverse? And the answer is opposites. So when we say what is the additive inverse of something, what is its opposite, that when we add that to it, the results are a 0. So if we have A, and then the opposite of A, it's going to equal 0. If we have a 20, the opposite of 20 is a negative 20. That gives you a 0. And they're mentioning what we had said in the previous lesson about the opposite of A. Negative A. Opposite of A. Because remember, inside that A, that could be a 10, or it could have been a negative 10. And so kind of a good way to read it is the opposite of A. All right, so find the opposite of 5. Negative 5. If you add negative 5 to 5, you get a 0. Negative 2. Some of these are pretty easy. A 2. Add a 2 to negative 2, you get a 0. Negative 15. Positive 15. Okay, Now, generally, when we are writing positive numbers, and it's starting off in a chain of numbers as positive, we don't write the positive sign. By convention, we don't write it. Now, we always write the negative sign. Now, once it's in a series of numbers, you need to write the positive because you have to keep them separated. Now, when we are adding integers vertically like this, one of the things you might do is add mentally the negative 20 and the negative 30 to get the negative 50, and then you add the 7 to it, which will give you your negative 43. You are allowed to do that. Now, these are referred to as the commutative, and in other cases, a slightly different property, the associative property. We are allowed to switch things around and then group them mentally into something like this. The switching around is the commutative property, and then the grouping together of these two negatives then, and treating it as this first, is the associative property. In fact, let me write that out for you here. So here they're showing us that if we have an item and then plus an item, in addition, we can switch these around, the order. This is the commutative property of addition. And here we have the orders the same, A, B, C, A, B, C. But if we put our parentheses here, this indicates we should add A and B together first. But if we put it here, we could add the B and C together first. Here you would add these, then the C. Here you would add these and the A. That's sort of what went on here. They switched the order. In a sense, they're putting the negative 30 there, then getting the negative 50, and then they add a 7 to it to give you your 43. So a couple of examples. Here we see the order where we could add these two together first. Or, again, if you're using your calculator, but you want to have an intuitive sense of what's going on here, you get a 29. Or we can add the negative 10 and negative 3, get the 13, and then do our calculation. Now, for letter C, not a big thing that you could do, but you might add the 6 and the 7, get a 13, the 8 and the 9, get a 17, 13 and 17 then would give you a negative 30. One way to do it. You are allowed to do that. Okay, for our last little part of this, and this will be a short one, is negative 10 a solution for that little equation we have there? So what we do is we substitute the value, negative 10, where the x is. So negative 10 plus 8 is at a negative 2. And as you see here, it is. So negative 10 is a solution for x. How about a 1 for the x here? Now, if you put a 1 plus a negative 5, does that equal a negative 6? No, that's a negative 4, and that does not equal a negative 6. How about a negative 17 here? Remember, the y itself is a negative 17, so 17 plus a negative 17 is that 0, and it is. So it is a solution. And that wraps up this one.